What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I am broadcasting from somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic at this point. Yeah. We're totally flooded out here in New York City. Hurricane Sandy hit last night, and it was very interesting. I've never experienced something like this before. With me, as always, is the great, the wonderful, the majestic Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
You know that scene in the movie 2012 where the plane takes off right as Los Angeles is falling apart right behind it?
Yes, one of my favorite scenes ever.
Yeah, that was how I left Boston, right in front of this storm on Sunday night.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you, Paul, we lost power. For people that don't live on the East Coast, we got hit with a huge hurricane here. I was like, it'll be small. You know, it was windy all day. I moved all the stuff from the backyard, no problem. Around 8 o'clock, I mean, the gust was about 100 miles an hour.
Right.
I mean, this thing was just blowing. And our power went out a couple times, but we are the only house in the neighborhood that did not lose any power or didn't have any like massive damage happening.
And now everyone is really suspicious of you.
Everybody, yeah. Considering my house is about 105 years old and my power line is literally just dangling off the floor. So, did you guys get hit at all in Boston? How was it?
Yeah, I don't think it was as bad as where you are, though. We had, you know, not trees, but limbs fell down around the neighborhood. Our basketball net is ruined, but missed our car when it fell over. So,
but nothing much, right? Nothing crazy.
No, we get storms there. I mean, it was no different than any other hurricane type storm, I guess, for us. I know it was a lot more serious in other places.
I'm trying to fix this feed. People are complaining that nobody could watch, and I had to lower the speed of the feed. But I think now it's better. I don't know what's going on here. We're having bandwidth issues, but the storm is over. Things are all right here, and we're broadcasting live. So if anything happens, if the feed goes down, now you know why. So you're not home right now. That is not your new apartment. You didn't move. You are at Build.
Yeah, this is actually Rafael Rivera's apartment. I'm staying with him while I'm in Redmond or in Bellevue. So if it's Tuesday, I must be at Build.
How has it been so far?
It's been crazy. I can tell you this because they said it explicitly. They will never do this show here ever again. It is a logistical nightmare. And they funneled thousands of people through a queue that was maybe 3 people wide, and they wouldn't let people go any other way. And let me tell you, the natives were getting really restless. I thought a fist fight was going to break out. It was just so shabbily done. So I guess the problem is it's a big deal. It's, you know, a lot of people here. Sure. They don't really have the facilities to make it work. And,
where has it been in previous years?
It's been at the Los Angeles, what's it called? The Los Angeles Convention Center.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
so
big places.
Big place.
Years ago, it was in the Seattle Convention Center. It's been all over the place.
I'm assuming everybody's there. Everybody that's involved, all the bloggers.
Oh yeah, all the people you saw, almost all the people you saw that night last week were there. You know, Mary Jo's here, Tom Warren is here, Raphael and Long Zhang is here, and Kip, you know, from Liveside is here. Yeah, I mean all the.
I do want to touch on Bill, but you mentioned last week you had and Mary Jo had a Microsoft Windows 8 meetup in New York City the day after launch. I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun.
I was worried about you.
Why? You sent me an apology letter. You're like, I'm sorry, I didn't get time to talk to you.
What I recall is I said we should talk for a couple of minutes, and I started walking with you toward the
No, you actually said
No,
we
I
should
guess.
talk for a couple minutes. Can you get a seat at the window? And I went to go get a seat at the window, and you just got like bum rushed.
And then 2 hours went by.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I was first of all, I was really surprised how many people knew who I was.
Actually, let me tell you. Let me tell these people the funniest thing about you. I think that happened that night.
That I was your personal photographer.
Well, no, but that you were texting me before I got there because I had to swing by the hotel to drop off my bags and everything, and you know, you were like, "I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and then you said, "I'm talking to a Microsoft guy," and you know, "Where are you?" And so finally, I get there. It's like 45 minutes later, and everyone wants to talk to me, but I'm like, I got to find Andrew first. He's been trying to reach me for the last 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
I walk around the entire area that we have, and you're not there. And so there's another party in the back of the room. And I thought, well, maybe, you could see how this would seem like the same thing. Maybe he's back there. And so I went back there and you weren't there. And then I texted you. I'm like, where the hell are you? And you're like, I'm here. And I'm like, no, you're not there.
You're at the wrong place. That's what you wrote to me.
You were downstairs. You were in a different place. But the funny thing about this, not that we had a hard time meeting up, which is probably a very common story in the big city, but rather that you actually somehow managed to find a Microsoft guy, which made total sense.
No, they found me.
Oh, okay. But you were downstairs.
I was downstairs, and I actually walked in, and I actually thought about going upstairs.
Yeah.
And there was like a group of 20 Chinese girls.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, maybe it's a private party up there. Like, I didn't put two and two together that, like, okay, maybe they're upstairs. I'm like, oh, maybe they're having a private party because it looked like there was a party going. Like, they had balloons.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'll ignore that. So I'm standing and I'm texting. A viewer of our show comes over and he goes, hey, Andrew, I'm a big fan of your show. I'm a big fan of Paul's. And I started talking, and one of the guys that he was hanging out with was a Microsoft guy. So I'm like, okay, so at least I'm in the right place. And we were talking. Like an hour went by, and I finally realized the party's up there. So as I'm walking upstairs, some random guy comes over. He goes, hey, Andrew, Paul's looking for you. I was like, okay. And he goes, by the way, I love Queens, and I'm a big fan of the 7 line, which is the sticker that I have behind me for people that are listening and not watching. My buddy owns this clothing company. It's a Mets like clothing company. And he's like, I'm a big fan of the brand.
Do they always unravel at the end of the season?
At the end, everything just comes apart. No matter how good the quality is. I don't know what it is. But I'm telling you, I had such a great time. There were so many good people there.
Yeah.
And
those things are therapeutic in some ways because I deal with such shit bombs on Twitter and in the comments section of my blog sometimes, or an email sometimes. And not that I'm like asking for accolades or anything, but it's nice every once in a while to run into people who are just legitimately nice people and are just really happy to see you. I mean, it was very humbling and nice, and it was nice. I mean,
I'll tell you something. Paul's a mega celebrity for people who don't know. I mean, this guy.
No,
people were all, they wanted your autograph. I mean, you are a mega celebrity. I took pictures. I tweeted pictures. I was like, what a celeb.
Sure.
And I sent it out. No, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to see how many passionate people there are that actually, they give a crap about this stuff and they're really interested in it.
Sure.
I had a lot of fun talking to a lot of people, but there was a weird situation afterwards.
Yes.
And I'm gonna go through this because
right.
I'm sure a lot of people that saw me there were curious about the blonde that I was with.
Was she?
She was always a blonde. Yeah, she's like a dirty blonde now.
I don't remember.
So after the party, my good friend that I grew up with, she was having dinner with her clients a couple blocks away. So I told her where I was. She said she was coming over. My wife was not able to make it. She had a job interview.
And just to be clear, actually, maybe an important part of the story is that your wife is now completely unreachable.
Unreachable at this point. I mean, she's gone. I've been calling her. Her job interview was at 7.
Kidnapped and taken to like Yemen or something.
Oh, no, I told Paul, I'm like, I think my wife is dead. I think she's gone. And Paul's like, I'm sure she's fine. I'm like, nope. Her mother called me. Her aunt called me. Do you know where Jess is? I have no idea where Jess is. I'm like, she had a job interview. That's all I know at 7. Turns out
from what I can tell, you're basically just preparing for your genless future.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I don't have my wedding ring on also because my wife went to go get it cleaned. So there's a lot of weird stuff happening at this point. The party's ending. My friend meets up with us. We go upstairs. Immediately, someone goes, "You must be Miss Zarian, Mrs. Zarian. It's so good to finally meet you." Now I'm thinking, good thing she knows. Like, her and my wife are good friends. Like, we're all good friends here. And I felt a little weird. Like, I felt guilty. I don't know why I felt guilty. I was like, oh, no, this is just my friend. I'm like, she's just subbing in for the day. I introduced her to you, and you guys left, and we sat down where we had a drink at the bar. This lady comes over, and I didn't really recognize her from the party. Maybe she was standing in the back. But this lady comes over, and she goes, that is not your wife.
Right.
I was mortified. I didn't know what to say. I'm like, she's not.
You're right.
That's all I said. That's all I had for her. I'm like, she's not. And I was thinking, I'm like, if you're a fan of the show, if you like the show that we do, why would you out me? Even if I was on a date.
Well, and more important, you thought your wife was dead.
Yeah, I was moving on.
I just think it's important to move on.
So we thought it was hysterical. I would love to know who that viewer was. If you ever, please send me an email, because I couldn't stop laughing at that point. And she just ran off. Like, she just exposed me for the villain that I am, and then just took off. It would have been funny if it was Mary Jo. That would have been really funny.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of fun. It was a good party. A lot of good people there, and a lot of great emails from people. So, and for the people who care, me and my wife are still together, and that was not a girlfriend.
Yeah,
and she's alive. So to kind of move on to some of the news, that was story time with Andrew and Paul. 13 minutes of it. I do want to touch on this. I had a chance to play around with the Surface at the party, and I had a chance to play around with the Surface. One of my buddies got the Surface. I still have not. I didn't make it to the store the following day.
Okay. You might.
There's a crying cat in my house. I don't understand why. It's like a kitten. Somebody brought a kitten in. I had a chance to play around with Surface, and I was really surprised at the fact that you're still in the Windows environment, the desktop environment.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that I'm in it as much as I am was really shocking to me.
I think that, how do I say this? The Surface is sort of a slightly more pure version of Microsoft's vision for the future, but they have to bring the desktop forward in some capacity, right? And in Windows RT, it almost makes no sense at all, because you can't run desktop applications that don't come with it, and it's just such a weird, constrained little thing. And I think the way I kind of summarized it in an article that I believe that was published finally today is that, Windows RT is the future, but we don't live in the future. We live now, and right now there aren't really a lot of Metro apps. There aren't any excellent Metro apps, certainly. There's no 5 or 10 gotta have it apps. I mean, there's really not much going on there. It's not compatible with any of your older applications. It runs in a very constrained environment from a resources perspective. The processor is not very fast. The RAM is not very much. The storage is small. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, so I guess in some ways it's like an iPad that has some desktop stuff, but not necessarily enough.
Yeah, but I was surprised. I mean, and I think that throws a lot of people off. And, I read up on this stuff, and I was even taken back. And my buddy was like, I had no idea this was Windows. Like, he went into it with the opposite expectations of some people. Like, some people think that it is Windows. He's like, I didn't expect this to be Windows.
Right.
And he wasn't really happy with the fact that, when you're in the fact that it puts you in desktop for, let's say, any kind of file management or any kind of like control panels in there. If you're doing Word, it's in there. And you still have to touch the X.
Yep.
And he was actually taken back by it. And I found it interesting that he had that perception that it was all Metro and it wasn't Windows, when a lot of people go into it thinking it's all Windows and no Metro.
This doesn't surprise me, only because I've been dealing with this, with these people and their misunderstandings, for a while now. I mean, my bigger issue is just that, I mean, I sort of go into Surface understanding what it is. And my question is, can this possibly be something that people can use? And I think that I think a lot of people can get by with an iPad type device, an iPad or an Android tablet, and normal consumers, whatever, that's fine. But the Surface stumbles even at that, because there just is no ecosystem support like you get on those other two platforms.
How many apps would you say, Paul, like top apps, does
Yeah.
the store have right now?
Yeah, zero. I would say it has
Yeah.
zero. I really don't think it has any. I mean, there are a couple of older games like Cut the Rope, that are in there.
Well, you have the Skype app. You have,
Yep.
maybe a handful.
Okay, but
You know,
if you were to look at the list of the top 50 apps on iOS or Android, right? Microsoft made the point of saying this week that 46 of them are or soon will be available on Windows Phone 8. I bet like 6 of them are available
or currently, yeah,
on phone.
and that's a problem.
Windows 8 or RT.
Why do you think that? Do you think that's because the developers it took them a long time to kind of put it out there for them, or?
It's a lot of uncertainty. I think there are a lot of people not clear on what they're getting into. Um, and I mean that I'm sorry, I don't mean that from a consumer sense, although that's obviously true, but I mean it from a developer sense, that in the same way that all of these device types around Windows 8 and Windows RT are confusing to the PC makers who are making them, which ones of these are going to be popular and so forth. I think it's confusing for developers too, which horse do you back and so forth. And it's just, we'll see. These are conversations that are going to be very different in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. But it's still bizarre to me, looking back on this, that on the day that Microsoft launched Windows 8, they launched Surface with Windows RT, not Surface with Windows 8. That would have been the one to ship now. It would have been the one that would have been.
But let me ask you, what was the reason for that? Was it to kind of push RT as, the tablet device? Is that what they wanted to do? Because I don't look at the Surface as a tablet. I look at it as a hybrid device.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's very strange. I mean, there's a situation with this device where there's always a but at the end of the sentence. The hardware is beautiful, but the software is fairly elegant for whatever there is of it. But there's always a but, and this is the opposite of that kind of no compromises mantra that Microsoft has around Windows 8. I mean, I look at Windows RT and Surface with Windows RT specifically as very much a compromise. It's just a compromise. For listeners of this podcast and of Windows Weekly or whatever people read my site, I mean, it is never going to replace your computer in its current form.
RT,
so or the Surface, and it is thus a companion device. And when you start talking about companion devices that cost $500 and up, there's some pretty mature choices in the market right now. It's a tough thing to ask people to do.
What would you say as a mature? You're talking about the iPad.
iPad is obviously, the clear choice here. Definitely. Anyone who chooses a Surface over an iPad is either someone who is firmly in the Microsoft camp, which is a very small crowd, I think, but I'm sure they're out there. They're certainly all here this week. They just hate Apple for whatever reason. Or, I can't, what else? Who else would they be? I don't know. I mean, why would you do that now? It just doesn't, unless you just have this visceral reaction to Apple where you can't stand them and don't want anything that they make. I don't understand
why you would get an RT over, let's say, a Windows 8 Windows 8 device,
or over iPad,
over even an iPad. Well, here's the thing. I think even with the iPad, if you take, let's say, the Mac experience, OS 10, and you take an iPad and you say, okay, what do you get with the iPad that you don't get with this?
Sure.
You could come up with a couple of arguments. You could come up versatility. The size of it, you get apps, the simplicity of it for some people is what they want.
That there wasn't an iPad Pro.
There's no iPad Pro that runs OS 10 and that on top of it. That's where the argument lies. If there was a device, and who knows? I mean, maybe it wouldn't sell. Maybe there was a device that did both. Maybe you had iOS and then you could have the Mac operating system on there. Maybe that would have sold over iOS, by itself.
I don't think so.
I don't know if that argument kind of lies between them, but in my opinion, if you have an option between having the full Windows experience or having a half-ass Windows experience, I'm going to go with the full experience.
It's awful. I don't have a very clear thing I can say where this is how you fix it. Obviously, what needs to fix it, or the thing that will fix it, is time. Over time, Microsoft will evolve the Metro environment, and maybe we don't need the desktop, and maybe RT2, or whatever they choose to call it, is the pure version of this Metro OS, which has always been the point of this thing, and is the future of Microsoft's general purpose computing platform.
Isn't it crazy that we're thinking, well, we wish that they dumbed it down a little bit more?
It's only crazy if you've never seen the iPad. I mean, I think the iPad and or Microsoft is clearly trying to emulate this was kind of a triumph of people saying no. That when you get 13 people in a room, every one of them wants something different. So the Microsoft approach in the past has always been to give everyone all 13 of those features.
Yeah.
Whereas Apple said, no, most of those features are stupid. We're going to do two of those features. We're only going to do the two that most people want. We're going to do them really, really well.
Yeah.
And if you want the other stuff, like, the ability to plug in a USB anything or expand the storage or whatever it was, over time they added stuff for, photo acquisition and so forth. We're not doing that. And Microsoft it's funny that they're trying to make those kinds of decisions. They'll tell you that the reason they didn't add cellular broadband to this product is because X number of people use it and it's not that big of a deal. To which I would respond, that's not how a leader makes a decision. Apple did not add, in other words, Apple didn't take out the ability to expand the storage in an iPad because people didn't want it. They took it out because they made it a strategic decision that that's what they were going to do. Not because there was some poll of users that said that people didn't want this. Leaders just lead. You should put it in there because it doesn't matter how many people actually use it. It should be an option. You need to be as good or better than the competition. So the Surface has a USB port. Neat. It only has one of them. That kind of sucks, especially when there's no dock that you can turn this into a actual computer with.
Yeah.
So you get one port for expansion. There's no way to do Ethernet on this thing, although maybe USB Ethernet adapter would work. I haven't tried it. Obviously, you can do a hub, whatever. But they don't go the final mile themselves. It's kind of a cobbled together kind of thing.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it was that they were rushing to get this device out, or is it kind of the Apple mentality where you put out a 1.0 device and people say, well, it's pretty good, and the second one gives you all the features that you expected?
It's form over function.
Yeah.
Decided that form over function is what's selling. We're going to make something beautiful that people want. There are a couple of killer features in this thing, right? The keyboard covers, the touch cover. And
it's great.
Incredible. They work really well. Those things are awesome. But for every one of those things that's awesome, there's this thing that is so brain dead, stupid, bad that it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so what's that one feature
for example,
that you hate?
Okay, and I'll make these will be like one-to-ones because these things are related. So you've seen the ad Surface. It's click, 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 click. It's about the keyboard and the thing clicking together. And together, and they hold really well.
It's a great magnet ad.
By the way, those things, that works great. You know what doesn't work great? Is the same exact little type of connection that you make between the power cord and the device itself. So, if you use an Apple laptop, they have this what do they call it? MagSafe connector?
MagSafe connector, yeah.
That thing is just a magnet, and it works really well. It can go in upside down, left, right, sideways, whatever. It just works. The Microsoft one also can go in up or down, but it never connects properly. Like, there are times when that thing actually latches onto the side of the device, makes a metallic click sound. It's not connected. You actually have to physically wiggle it around and make sure it gets in there. Like, it's so poorly designed and so bad that it is just laughable. It is that Quick Burger thing I was talking about where the French came to the United States, saw McDonald's, and then didn't take any notes. It was like somebody saw that someone has a magnetic connector on a thing, and we're just going to do the same thing, but they never thought through it. It's so poorly done. It's terrible.
See, to me, that's something that they learn from, and the next one will probably have
so my
a
advice
better one.
They learn from it. That's exactly what I'm saying. So they don't know what they're doing. This is the first one they ever did. They got some things right. They got some things wrong. Some things wrong. The software is not complete. Why would anyone buy one of these things? It just doesn't make any sense. You should not buy one of these things.
So you said the software is not complete. Do you think that'll stand for?
I don't know.
Windows 8, Intel-based devices.
So.
See, that's the problem. I think the biggest problem to me is not. I'm actually, and the biggest argument that I had was for why I haven't moved over to Windows 8 on a lot of my machines is I don't want to be in Metro. I want to be in desktop because a lot of my applications that I use for production are in desktop mode. So I don't want to be involved with Metro. I was shocked when I started using this, using Windows 8 more and more, that I'm never in Metro and I'm in desktop a lot more. So for the desktop and for a laptop, okay, that's great. But if I'm a tablet user,
Yeah.
And I'm constantly being thrown back into desktop mode every time, I'm trying to use an application. I don't think the desktop has been refined for every touch screen device. You still have to touch the X. The one thing that bothered me actually about it a lot was when I was using the Surface, that little trail behind you every time you touch is on by default.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. Why would they do that? I don't know. Maybe listen. Maybe it won't bother a lot of people, but it's going to be interesting to see how how this plays out for the long run, because it's still desktop. Metro's there, but I mean, everything is in desktop. I kind of would have rather them disable desktop on an RT device, just taking it out totally, and maybe
that's right. And I think they will, but that won't be till version 2. So they just can't do it. I assure you that when they can, they will instantly. They're heading there. I don't remember if we talked about this last week or recently or whatever, but I just would remind people that there is a happy middle ground maybe between Windows RT and Windows 8 Pro, and that is Windows 8 Pro running on this new Atom platform, the Clover Trail platform, right? Which is the compatibility of the Intel stuff, so it runs all your old software, with the power management and kind of low system requirement stuff of the ARM-based platform, big battery life and so forth.
What device is going to be running that?
So the ThinkPad 2 is one example of this. The tablet that I've been sort of semi-recommending, but was actually in fact misnaming. There are two Acer Iconios coming out. There's one that's already out in the market now. It's a W7, or I think maybe a W700 might be the model. It's bigger. It has a weird L-shaped dock that it kind of slides into. That one is running we call them Ivy Bridge type processors, like normal Core 5, i7, whatever. There's a little brother version of that coming out. That's the one I saw in New Zealand. That's the one I've now pre-ordered. That is running Clover Trail, and it is a tiny little, I want to say 10-inch, really super thin and light looking, beautiful white tiny tablet. And those devices, we have to see. I have a kind of a bug about Atom. I'm not a big fan of Atom, but this next generation is supposed to be Intel's version of ARM.
And let me tell you, this ThinkPad 2 tablet looks phenomenal. It's starting at $649, which isn't too crazy of a price. Yep. You're getting full Windows. It's 7.1-inch display, 10 hours of battery life, dual 2 megabit and 2 megapixel and 8 megapixel camera, and it comes with 4G.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a smart bet to get, and it's Windows. I mean, you have Windows on there.
And those guys have not publicized this yet, I don't think, but Lenovo is also backing this with a crazy selection of accessories, including desktop docks and all this stuff. So all the little picayune complaints I've had about the Surface are all solved by this device. So yeah. Now, I mean, I know there are Microsoft fanboys apparently, or there are people who just are tired of Apple and all that kind of stuff, and it's understandable that when you look at the Surface, it's beautiful to look at, and I get why people kind of want it without really understanding what they're getting. But I would just warn people to be very sure what they're getting into with this device, because it is frustrating to use. It's really frustrating, and just I haven't even had it a week, and in the short number of days that I've had it, I have run into these limitations repeatedly, and just even though I know exactly what's going on with this thing, I find it very frustrating.
I think I'm going to get the ThinkPad tablet too, because it comes with a little button thing.
There you go.
It's not bad. Not bad at all.
Yep.
Now, do you recommend people not to get it?
Well,
by the way, people are messaging me and saying, has hell frozen over? Paul is saying, don't get the RT. Are you saying don't buy the RT and wait?
I don't understand what the market for RT is right now. I just don't understand who would need this or want it. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. The Surface RT gets apparently about 8 hours of battery life. I've not actually measured this, but that's not appreciably better than a decent, Windows 8 Ultrabook. So you can't make this argument, it gets killer amounts of battery life. I mean, I guess, not including the fact that it has 0 apps and that its media marketplace is way less mature and not as well stocked as Apple's, when you compare this thing to the iPad, what you're getting is a slightly better integrated keyboard solution for a device.
But see, I don't think it's a fair comparison with the iPad. I wouldn't compare this to the iPad because I don't see this as. I mean, yeah, it's a touchscreen device and it's a tablet, but it's a hybrid device to me. I feel that the experience, because desktop is there, you still need a keyboard. That's why it comes with a keyboard.
Actually, this is funny too. This is another thing I noticed this on this trip when I was using the Surface, that I've talked in the past about how when you use touch devices, you seem to want touch everywhere, right? So you use touch for a while, then you start touching other screens, and these screens don't have touch, and it's a little strange. On the flip side, when you use the Surface with a keyboard attachment, it has a little trackpad on it. And so you start forgetting that this thing has touch. So, basically you find yourself using this thing that is like a really small laptop, with a really subpar keyboard for a laptop. I mean, it's cool for what it is. I am amazed how well the keyboards work, including the touch cover, which has no business working at all. I mean, it is sort of an amazing accomplishment. But ultimately, though, you're talking about something that's sort of like a little laptop, and it's like I just don't. I don't know. There's more to it than what we've discussed. I mean, there's weird issues with the the media stores that they have and the content that you can get and whether it works across different device types and all kinds of other weird things. There's an almost Apple-like insistence on dropping the past that Microsoft has never had. So that if you have a Windows Phone device, because you've been a Microsoft guy and you did Media Center, you bought Zune HD, then you bought Windows Phone, and then you buy Surface with the Windows RT. Well, congratulations. There's no way to sync that device with Windows Phone that you may already have. It's just a tough thing, and I wish, I don't know if I wish. I mean, I sort of wish that there was some way I could say, okay, well, here's some instances where this might make sense for somebody. But I'm really having a hard time coming up with it for Windows RT, and with Surface for RT in particular.
I think it's going to make a lot more sense when they further develop Metro. And first of all, have they commented still on this name? I mean, there's still no name.
No name.
Nothing.
No name of what? What do you mean?
For that environment, that's the Windows environment, right? The Metro environment.
So there. I was talking to guys from Microsoft before the launch about this, and they said that internally there are actually several names that are all acceptable for this. That there is, in fact, no one name that calls it. No one calls it the modern UI, which someone just typed. I mean, they refer to these modern apps, but it's not like modern with a capital M. It's just like they're modern apps, meaning they're modern, new apps. Windows Store apps are fine. They call them different names. It depends on the group. It depends on the person. There is no formal name for it at Microsoft yet. So
the UI formerly known as Metro.
Stupid.
Yeah. I don't know. But I think it's going to make more sense to a lot of us when these apps are developed. Yep. There's more to do on it, and
there's a Windows Phone app by Microsoft. Yeah, there is, except that it doesn't work with Windows Phone 7. So it doesn't change what I said earlier. Windows Phone 7 does not work with Windows RT.
Have you gotten any kind of idea of where they see it being in 6 months? Are they going to update it more to kind of bring some of this functionality that's missing to it?
Yeah,
they're going to have to. I mean, the update cycles have to be a lot more now.
Right.
A lot quicker.
A big part of this is going to be app availability, right? Apps will happen. There's no doubt about it. Games will happen. The media store will evolve. All this stuff is going to happen. I think I said last week that, when the iPad came out, they made this case, well, it can run all of the iPhone apps, so you're fine, and anyone who tried running an iPhone app on an iPad knew that was terrible. I mean, what you really needed was those apps. But the apps happen very quickly on the iPad. So it is possible that these apps will happen quickly on Windows Phone Windows 8 as well, Windows RT. That will change things pretty dramatically. They have some interesting things going on the media side. Obviously, the Xbox Music Pass is very interesting. The ability to do free streaming for the first 6 months is very interesting, I think, to people. The video store, you can rent TV shows buy TV shows, rent movies, buy movies. It's there. Um, there's a Kindle app. There's going to be an Audible app. That stuff is all kind of happening. So, depending on your needs, a lot of that's happening. I don't think we're going to see an iTunes app ever. I don't think.
For Metro.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That Windows RT. I don't know when or if or how we'll ever have Adobe apps that aren't more than just those stupid mobile apps that they put out on like the iPad. The notion of full Photoshop ever appearing in the Metro environment anytime soon, right? And running on RT is kind of laughable. These systems the RT systems all ship with 2 GB of RAM. 32 or 64 gigabytes of storage. These are not.
You're not going to be doing serious Photoshop or video editing on this thing.
But like you noticed, one of the problems is you look at this thing and you're like, I'm looking at the desktop. What's going on here?
It's a computer. Yeah. It's a Windows machine.
Yeah. It's a computer that doesn't do anything my computer
I
does.
actually, when I picked it up, Paul, I was talking to one of the guys at the party, and I was going through it, and I'm like, and I almost stood back, and I go, holy crap, like, this is like Windows.
Yeah.
Like, I actually was a little surprised. Then the guy said he was really surprised that he hasn't seen me drunk yet. I got that a lot. Can I just say, before you go on to the next topic, I got that all night. They go, I was really expecting you to be passed out on the floor somewhere.
Right.
And I turned around, I'm like, sir, I am functioning. I'm not full blown.
I think if it had been you and me, we probably would have been passed
Yeah,
out.
because me and you, I mean, you and I have had drinks together, and, we get a little belligerent by the end of it. But
Yeah.
we started yelling at the bartender about, her iPhone and.
Or just to see if anyone notices.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Oh, no, you actually, when Paul and I and Mary Jo met up in the city a couple months ago, we were sitting at the bar, and there was a guy, we were talking about Windows Phone. It was a Windows Phone event, which we're going to get to now. And the guy was like, I have an iPhone. And Paul just like buried this guy. Paul just wouldn't stop. I mean, he was so relentless with the guy. It was one of the funniest things. He was the guy, in a suit and tie doing work. And he's like, I got an iPhone. And he just like buried this guy. It was so funny.
Yeah. I do this to people all the time. I was at the Windows 8 launch. I did a couple of times. I walked up to someone and was like, hey, is that an iPhone 5? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, can I see that for a second? And they hand it to me, and then I make it like I'm going to chuck it as far
Chuck
as
it right out of the window.
how far do you think I could throw this thing? They're like, don't stop.
I went there and I announced I was wearing a white jacket. I'm like, this is to represent the purity of Apple.
Yes.
Some guy wanted to punch me right in my face. Probably from Microsoft. So Windows Phone 8 has launched.
Yes, it does.
Let's talk about this for a little bit, because Verizon is getting a couple phones, and they're actually getting some decent phones.
I'm a little down on RT, but actually, Windows Phone 8 is awesome. It's awesome. And
Anything that we didn't know that's a little different. I was, because of all the hoopla happening yesterday, I was kind of in and out of it, but I heard that they changed the lock screen.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. So Microsoft's advantage with Windows Phone has always been around this notion of dynamic content, of live updating and all this stuff, that you're not staring at this grid of icons searching for that app you want to get into to go see something. You're like, I wonder if there are any Facebook updates. I'll launch the Facebook app. Or I wonder if I have an email, or you have email because there's a number on it. Let me go see what that email is. Windows Phone has always put that stuff up right front and center. You don't have to dive into apps to find that stuff out. And so it's always been a much more personal experience. And in Windows Phone 8, they're extending that functionality in many ways. But one of the cool ways they're doing it is with this notion of live apps that can impact the lock screen. And so previous versions of Windows Phone, obviously, you could set a favorite photo as the lock screen. But now apps can control the lock screen. So you can do things like, I want Facebook to control my lock screen, and so you can configure it in different ways. But one of the ways would be, photos dynamically appearing from your your photo timeline or whatever it's called. Facebook will appear on your lock screen. That's cool, but it's well beyond that kind of stuff. It's not just like photos and stuff. You could have like the Bing picture of the day up there if you want that, and that will work automatically. It's neat, but there's also like some real programmatic stuff behind it. So you could do something like Groupon could control your lock screen, and so when you have Groupon on your lock screen, it's on Windows Phone, so it knows where you are, and so it can show you dynamically deals that A, are of interest to you, and B, are nearby you, so that you can walk into the place because it's that close and go take advantage of that deal. I mean, that's actually really, really cool. And
Sure.
still, the thing that's interesting about this is just that the argument about the iPhone and or iOS, I guess, the whole interface of iOS is just that it makes you do all the work, whereas the beauty of Windows Phone is that it does all the work and it just presents you with the stuff that you want to see. I mean, obviously you can configure it however you want, but it's really, really nicely done. And yeah, that kind of, lock screen is just one of, many, many things, but um,
Now, this to me, it looks like a modern, matured operating system on this phone.
yep, HD, beautiful devices.
I mean, I'm looking at some of the screenshots, and I'm a huge fan of this, and I'm surprised more people are not using it, and I'm curious because I know Microsoft. Actually, one of the people that came to the party works for a very big ad company, and they worked with this company to do their advertising, and it's a multi-million. I mean, they're taking out millions of dollars worth of ads for Windows 8. Are they going to be doing the same for Windows Phone 8? Because I think if more people know about this phone and know about the things that it does,
Right.
they're gonna be interested in it.
Well, so I think for this version, aside from the technical and usability stuff, some of the stuff that's going on here is that Microsoft is going to be pushing this a lot harder, pushing it with their own advertising, pushing it through carriers, and doing things like that. So you notice that there were 3 phones coming on Verizon this fall, 2 in November, and then 1 in December.
Which Verizon got. I mean, they didn't get any great ones last year.
They did.
Windows Phone 7. I mean, they didn't really have much.
Their first phone came out in April of last year, and then they haven't ever, I think, or something like that. They haven't updated it since. So there's some good phones coming on Verizon, including the phone that currently is my favorite, which is that HTC Windows Phone 8X, which is just absolutely beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful phone. Great camera, by the way. Gorgeous device. But you're also getting a Samsung Odyssey, which no one has seen yet, so we'll see what that is. I'm guessing it's an ATIV 5 or whatever they're calling it, ATIV S, I guess, rebranded for Verizon. It seems like one of the things that's happening with Windows Phone 8 is that they're going, and by they I mean that Samsung and Nokia anyway, are doing the BlackBerry thing, where they make a slightly modified version of the same devices for each carrier. And while that might sound a little bit confusing, it is what carriers want. They want to put their stamp on the machine and have their own kind of branding on it and their own exclusive. And by sort of adhering to this need, I think Windows Phone is going to get pushed a lot more than it did in the past, because in the past, these guys just didn't do that kind of thing.
No, they didn't care. I mean, you would go in there and they would try to sell you an iPhone or a Google phone. I mean, that's the truth of it. I'm hoping they do a better job at marketing this.
Yep.
Because if you look at all the current phone operating system, you look at the iOS and you look at Android and you look at Windows Phone and BlackBerry, Windows Phone looks like it belongs in this era.
Yeah.
It really, it's a modern looking, totally different what everybody else is doing operating system.
It's always been different, but I think the thing that's cool about it is if you were to look at the first gen Windows phones, second gen Windows phones, with the exception of the Lumias, the Nokia devices that finally came to market last year, they were basically just rebranded, reshelled Android phones, And I think as the third ecosystem or fourth ecosystem, you kind of accepted this. It was like, well, these guys don't really care about Windows Phone. We get it. At least they're doing something. It's better than nothing, that kind of thing. But with this rendition, this third generation of systems, we're finally seeing some phones, Nokia as obviously, but also HTC especially, that are just beautiful and custom and for this phone line only. It's not an HTC One X rebranded. It is a beautiful new phone.
Yeah.
And that phone, the HTC 8X, is as good looking as anything in the world today. It is as beautiful as an iPhone 5. It is as nice to hold. It is as thin and light, and it's just beautiful. And those two phones side by side, obviously some people might pick one over the other. Everyone has different tastes and everything. But there's no way that a majority of people would ever say, oh yeah, the iPhone is the clear winner here. I mean, they're just both beautiful. It's beautiful in its own way.
I want to get back to Windows Phone 8 and some of the Google announcements before we wrap it up. But I do want to talk about something, Paul. As you know, Paul, we are, and a lot of people came up and said they've been voting for us. We're in the finals of the Stitcher Awards.
Wow.
I
should vote now.
You should vote now, and I'm going to vote now, and I encourage all of our viewers to go vote now. If you go to Stitcher.com/vote, Stitcher Awards. Yeah, Stitcher Awards. I don't know why I was going to say Stitcher Rewards, but it's Stitcher Awards. I posted a link in the chat room. You can vote for What the Tech, and it's pretty simple to do it. And I'm curious on how far we could get. There was actually somebody from Microsoft that came over last minute as we were leaving, and she said, I'm a big fan of the show, and I've been voting for you every day. Just want to let you know. And, I thought that was cool that people were coming up and telling us that they're voting for us, because I don't think anybody likes me. But you can go to the website. You can hit on the vote now. I'm going to do it right now, actually. You can scroll down, and you see there's some tough competition there. But hit What the Tech, because, Paul likes you. And Paul will give you something nice if you vote for him. And it'll tell you, hey, you voted. You can vote every day. The voting actually stops on November 5th, I believe. So there's a couple days you can vote every day. And I want to see how far we could go with the show, because, I consider this my little... my baby and Paul's baby, and we're nurturing it, and it's growing up to be a awful teenager. And that's the whole point about, having children. But What the Tech is in the final, so if you want to vote for us, vote for us. If not, definitely still go and vote for whoever you want to vote for. There's a lot of other selections there. I actually discovered a really cool podcast called Skeptoid, and it's about, just let's say like Loch Ness. And he takes it from a skeptic's approach, and he discusses where it came from, the origin of it. He discussed the dancing plague. So there was a plague, there was an illness that caused people in the Middle Ages to, dance and until they died. It was like this psychological disease, some form of meningitis. I don't know. I was reading about it. It was pretty cool. But he had a whole thing on that. So I discovered it because I went to Stitcher and I found it. So Stitcher.com/Stitcher Awards. Really cool stuff there. You can vote for us and vote for all the other podcasts. And Paul will buy you ice cream next time he sees you.
Right.
By the way, your book, you handed those out. People were going crazy for it, and you ran out.
I know. I wish I had gotten more. We're doing an event like that tonight. It's probably going to be bigger, though, because there's a lot more people involved. But we have a similar allotment of books for tonight, and it's going to get ugly.
I want to touch on Google for a little bit before we wrap up, because I know you got to get out of here on time today. Google, their event kind of got messed up because New York got hit with the storm, but they very quietly announced the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 10-inch tablet.
Yep. And
the Nexus 4, as far as I know, is GSM only.
They all are, I guess. Yeah, they all are.
I mean, from what I saw, which I was very surprised by that, considering the previous one was both GSM and CDMA. I'm not too crazy about it. I'm not a big fan of LG. I'm going to skip right over that, but I do want to talk about the 10-inch Nexus tablet that they're releasing. Really interesting stuff. Really big display. Well, the resolution, 2560 by 1600 on the 10-inch display. Stereo speakers, multi-user support, offers 9 hours of battery life, 16 gig. I think it starts off at 16 gigs. Wi-Fi only you have on your website. Now, you're going to have...
Wi-Fi only for the $399.
For the $399, yeah. So there's a $399 version.
It's less than an iPad.
I mean, do you think it's still a little pricey for an Android tablet?
I think the baseline is to come in under the iPad. They obviously have their own ecosystem. It's growing up very quickly, and we'll see. I mean, I think it's smart and obvious of them to do this. They've made a new version of the 7-inch, by the way, that's apparently thinner, which is one of the weird things about that device. It's kind of bulbous, in the back. So maybe they fixed that, but I need to see one, to be sure. But you can see how these guys are all lining up. Google is establishing their own pure version of Android, which I think is smart. You've got Amazon doing their completely polluted version of Android, which for them is smart because they're pushing their own brand. And then they're going up against Apple, of course, with the iPad and iPhone, and then also against the whole Microsoft ecosystem as well.
I don't know. When I saw the price tag, I saw a 10-inch device. I believe the 7-inch one is $199 starting, and this is $399 starting. There's a big gap in the price, and it would have been a lot more appealing if it was $299.
Well, yeah, sure, but they're probably not making a lot of money on it as it is.
I have no interest in this device. No interest at all.
Yeah.
And I was
So,
very interested in the 7-inch one.
there's a big Kindle Fire HD coming out as well later in November. 8.9 inches, I think it is. Obviously, the iPad's been around for a while. The iPad still is kind of the bar, right, in this market. 10-inch tablets, roughly 10-inch tablets. You're gonna be hard pressed to find one that's thinner and better looking, bigger ecosystem than the iPad. I mean, it's just the way it is. So, something like the Amazon Kindle Fire HD. Obviously, those guys are competing on price, and I think there's a market for that. And on the Google side, it's like, well, they're in kind of a tough spot. They're kind of between the Amazon and Apple, but I'm not really clear what the huge differentiator is there, but I need to see it. I can't really say.
And it's pretty much the same thing. It's Jelly Bean version 4.2. I think it was, what was the name going to be for the next version? Key Lime Pie was supposed to be the name, but they skipped on it. They're still calling it Jelly Bean. It's no major changes. I think they changed the store a little, and they changed Google Now, which is their Siri competitor.
Right.
And a few other things. I think multi-user support is now added. Little changes here and there. No major updates. I don't know. This is the thing that bothers me, is that there's so much to select now. I mean, you have the iPad, you have the iPad Mini, you have the iPad 2 still on the market, you have the Surface. Now you have this. Which one do you pick and why? If I'm going into a store and I'm going to spend $300 to $500 to $400 on a device, what do I buy? It's not this price tag where it's a disposable device and you could get one every year.
Sure.
I mean, if you're spending $199, I could think, okay, every year you go and you pick one new one up and you experience it, but you're hoping to hang on to this thing.
It's not just which one do you buy. It's almost which ones do you buy. I mean, most people aren't going to be able to get by with one of the devices, or won't just have one. And how do you choose a 7-inch device versus a 10-ish inch device? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I feel like this market has to kind of consolidate down at some point, and I think we are already looking at who the major players will always be, for this foreseeable future. But
you're talking about BlackBerry, right?
Well, no, I'm very rarely ever talking about BlackBerry, which I think is the problem for those guys. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's iPad, iPhone, Surface, Android, and then Android/Amazon are the big things. But, even within some of those groups, there are many, many players. There are going to be many RT devices and Windows 8 devices. There are going to be many Android devices. At some point, this needs to kind of, get figured out. So
I think there's a place for all of them. I mean, depending on who you're trying to target, I think they all have a place.
But you're looking for, what matters to you most.
Yeah.
Who do you trust? I mean, a lot of people are very comfortable buying into the Apple system, which makes some sense to me. I happen to use Amazon all the time, so the Amazon devices are very interesting to me. Obviously, Microsoft stuff is always interesting to me, and they don't always get it right, but there's always this hope that they're going to get there at some point. We'll see, but Android is something that was so I'm just horrifically bad in the beginning and has gotten a lot better very quickly, right? We used to complain about Android all the time, including about the previous Nexus device, which was terrible. The phone device, that is.
Which I have.
Yeah, and I have one too. And it's a terrible, and that's by the way, that's why they're not doing 4G, is because of that device, because it required 2 antennas, it was thicker and got worse battery life. It's not the kind of experience they were shooting for.
I don't know. With Android, it has a place, but I don't know who benefits from it. I understand people that want to hack the thing and they want to play around with it, but that's a very small group of people. I don't see those aren't when my father has an Android phone, he's not looking to root this thing and install a new version of Android on there. So who's buying it? I think people are buying it because they're inexpensive, and they go into the store and they're like, hey, you want a $100 phone? Here's an Android phone.
I think that Android fills that part of the market that Windows used to fill in the PC market, or still does in the PC market, which is that you have a variety of choices from a hardware standpoint. It's a little more open, so there's more modification to the software, but there was obviously some of that in Windows as well. And it gives you that range of prices as well. You could choose something that is just as elegantly designed and beautiful as an iPhone, maybe, but you have that kind of compatibility with a very broad amount of software and all the the add-ons and so forth. And so, to me, Android is just the new Windows. It's just
Yeah, I mean that's actually a very fair statement to make. All right, so before we wrap up, because Paul needs to run out of here. Last week we did about an hour 40, so we went long last week. So we're gonna cut it on time. I got a bunch of what ifs this week from a lot of our listeners, and they were between what if Windows 8 did not have Metro, and what if Windows 8 did not have desktop? What would we be saying now? So why don't we do Metro this week and desktop next week?
Okay.
So what if Windows 8 did not have Metro? What would we be saying? What would the bloggers be saying? What would the reviewers be saying?
What if Windows 8 did not have Metro?
Did not have Metro, the new UI. I think it would be closer to what you had on your website. That's Sketch.
Yeah.
Where it was just a prettier looking Windows.
Well, I mean, think about the different ways you could handle this, right? In other words, you could just ignore the mobile world and say that, we're just Windows is for PCs, and that's what we're going to do. And that chunk of the market is going to either hold steady, maybe grow a little bit, or even decline a little bit. But as an overall percentage of the wider market for general purpose computing devices, it's going to be the minority share at some point. It's just going to go downhill. So they could have done that, and that I think would have sent the message to people that unless they were developing some other mobile platform on the side that they were very clear about, that Microsoft does not get where the future is heading, and that I think this would have had huge ramifications for the future of the company, because it creates that kind of downward spiral effect just out of perception. But the other approach they could have taken is the one that Apple took, which was simply, we get that mobile is the future, so we're going to create this new mobile environment called Metro, but we're not going to put it in Windows. Instead, what we're going to do is continue to evolve Windows on the side because our core customers demand that, and we're going to add mobile-like features to Windows, or in this case, Metro-like features to Windows.
Apps and just
apps run as floating windows, just like regular Windows, but have some of the advantages of Metro. Maybe share a programming backend or whatever it is. And the notion there would just have been like, look, Windows is going to continue to be the Wild West. You're going to get viruses and there are going to be problems. But if you want the pure environment, here it is over here on the side. And it's impossible to say how well that would have floated, but Apple's done a pretty good job of adding. Obviously, there's been some controversy here, but has done a pretty good job overall of adding iOS-like mobile elements to OS X.
Yeah, they added the message service, which I never use.
Application Center, the Launchpad interface, which a lot of people hate, but gives you that familiarity. That the goal here is you get people buying into your low-end devices, and then they move up to an expensive MacBook. That's a huge win for Apple. And one of the ways you can do that is to make the OS X system friendlier and more like those iOS devices. It doesn't have to become iOS necessarily. I mean, that's the way they've done it. And so,
do you think that would have been a better approach?
I think it would have made their business customers very happy. But the simple truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter what Microsoft could have released a carton of yogurt and called it Windows 8. No business customers were ever going to upgrade to it anyway.
I mean, we all agree that the worst thing they could have possibly done is had like an enterprise version without Metro.
Yeah,
that would have been the worst thing they could have possibly done.
It's tough. I ridicule is maybe a strong word, but I talked about how they like to say they made tough choices with Windows RT and all that kind of stuff. They did make some tough choices with Windows 8, right? I mean, they could have done the customer friendly thing and just left the start button there, or made it an option or something. They could have given you the option to boot right into the desktop. They could have done that. The Microsoft of 10 years ago would absolutely have done that, because they were just all about pleasing everybody. And so even though I don't agree with some of the choices they made, and even though certainly with Windows RT I don't agree with a lot of the choices they made, I have to sort of respect the fact that they are taking a stand. I don't necessarily think they've always hit the nail on the head, but they are taking a stand, and this is something Microsoft has never done before. And so they're not doing this what if scenario. They're doing a kind of a crazy what if. This time the what if scenario is not insane. It is what should have happened.
Yeah.
Crazy thing that's happening now, the real thing is what's nuts.
Yeah, that's the real what if. What if Microsoft totally abandoned what they've been doing and jumped to this bizarre environment that it's not Windows.
Yeah.
I mean, that the reality is it's not Windows anymore. It's this new direction of the company. It's a totally revamped operating system, but the question will always be there because it's still there.
Right.
You know, the old is still in with the new. So how do you do it? I really think, I don't know, you know, I sometimes think about it and I think, would it have been a better idea for them? And there are times that I'm using it and I think, well, I wish they just made Windows 8 a little bit more like their mobile system. But if they didn't go Metro, I don't even see them going with this UI for mobile. I think they would have just put Windows Phone 8, you know, the Windows Phone operating system on a bigger screen. That would have been the direction that they headed if they didn't have this idea for Metro.
I would have been so okay with that.
I would have too.
Yep.
So interesting stuff, though, Paul. I know the cops are coming to get you again, so we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Paul, where are you?
Hood.
You're in the hood. I've been actually hearing that all day. It's crazy here. It's like a war zone. All the trees are down.
This was even going to be possible today. I wasn't sure if you were going to lose power and disappear off the face of the earth for a couple of days.
Yeah, you know, I was going to message you last night with we might not have a show, but I held off till this morning, and everything was fine this morning. So, and I'm glad we did it. I had a lot of fun, Paul, as I do every week. And I did not have a drink. This was really coffee. For more Paul Thurrott, you can go to winsupersite.com. A lot of my topics that I discussed today on the show is from WinSuperSite. So I just go and I just rip Paul off and I pretend that I came up with show notes every week.
Hey, at least you...
Yeah. Go to winsupersite.com. Also, Paul does an amazing podcast every Thursday at 2 p.m. East on the Twit Network with Mary Jo Foley and Leah Laporte. Windows Weekly, where Paul talks all things Windows. We try to stay away from all the Windows stuff, but I mean, it's such a big story right now. How can we not?
Microsoft launch season, you know.
Yeah, I mean, how can we not? But I'm sure it's going to start settling down, and we're going to be talking about Android and the iPad again, over and over again. It seems like that's all that tech has become, right?
This coming month, well, there'll be Windows phones coming out too, but you know, obviously the new iPad's going to come out this month. The new Amazon Kindle Fire is going to come out. The new Nexus tablets are going to come out, and the phone, I guess. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot more going on. It's just the way. It's just a busy.
It's a busy time. Some breaking news. Early on, they posted in the chat room, but Lucasfilms has been sold to Disney for $4 billion.
Sure.
So that just came in. So see, we do some other stuff here on the show. It's not all about the
we cover.
Yeah. Anything else, Paul? What are you going to be up to? Where are you going to be? You're at Build, and you're also going to be at Win Connections.
Yeah, so tonight I'm going to the Build Blogger Bash, which is at Lucky Strikes in Bellevue, which is actually just around the corner from here. And I'll still be at Build tomorrow. And then Thursday morning, I fly to Las Vegas. And Mary Jo's doing a session of her own there, and then we're going to do a panel session. And then after the panel session, I'm going to be doing some book signing stuff there as well.
Very cool. I don't know how you do it because you're not this traveling type person for work. I think that's one of the aspects why we get along is we're kind of the same when it comes to that. So I don't know how you do it. I would lose my mind. I give you a lot of credit for all the traveling you've been doing.
Well, I haven't done a lot of it yet, but I don't know. I had to do this thing yesterday where I went to the Microsoft event, go into the airport, flew to Long Beach, and then back up to Seattle from Long Beach. And the reason I did that was because my whole convoluted travel trip was all on JetBlue. Other than that one leg, like they don't fly, I guess, or couldn't or wouldn't fly at the right time from Cisco to Seattle. So
what a disaster!
Like traveling to a third world country down there, it was unbelievable.
Well, Paul, get some rest, relax, have a couple drinks, and we'll see you all next week on What the Tech, guys. So good night.